Welcome everybody to the captive audience. Sorry for the late start. It is about 6:30 on February 10th. Was rushing to get back through traffic and made it, but running a few minutes behind. And I'm just glad to be on tonight because I think we've got really useful news to cover, and I just want to make sure that I bring it to you along with the opinion that you don't get to hear really anywhere else. Not a lot of people at the national level know or understand Oregon. Some are from Oregon or from Portland, even, but haven't lived in Portland or Oregon for many years. Others simply know the caricature that is the state and the city, but they don't know it at a deeper level like we do. So I love doing this and sharing this with you. Hi, Lori. Good to see you on, and thank you for joining. I'm going to kind of run through some national news and then head straight into a lot of stuff that's happening in our state that you probably need to know about. Starting off, this headline really hit big, and it hit just this afternoon. Um, uh, it was actually only about an hour and 15 minutes ago. The FBI has discovered a slew of over 2,000 previously undisclosed JFK assassination records. This is because the Office of the Director of National Intelligence submitted its plan to disclose the assassination records, and they had to get this information in order to do that. This is because President Donald Trump has ordered the declassification of all records relating to the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, which is RFK Jr.'s father, Martin Luther King Jr., and they have until March 9th to come up with a plan to release the information. The existence of 2,400 records was reported to the White House on Friday. They were allegedly found during the FBI review under the declassification order all these years. And it took an order from President Trump and a simple review from the FBI to find it. Now, here's something, if you believe that this wasn't covered up prior to this and that they had no idea that these records existed, I have some oceanfront property in Indiana I'd like to sell you. They were disclosed when the Office of Director of National Intelligence had to actually submit his plan, and which will be due by March 9th. It is not clear what the records include, but some experts actually said that it is unlikely it'll definitively prove whether the assassination was part of a broader conspiracy or whether Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone. But this is huge. It shows that the FBI is taking this seriously. And it's according to this source that was sharing what happened. The FBI is finally following the president's order. And you know what? They might be noticing that that some people are getting canned who just aren't following the orders of the duly elected president, or sought to undermine the president and frankly the country and commit treason in some cases, which I think we'll sort out in the long run. But also, they know that they're going to have a new director very soon. They already have an attorney general who is watching them like a hawk, Pam Bondi. And once they have Kash Patel, all hell will be breaking loose there, as it should. If these are agencies that are important and we need them, then getting them back to where people can trust them again is absolutely critical. And heads are going to have to roll for that to happen. They are not a government unto themselves. And some people, such as the people at USAID, thought they were. And we heard as much from the interim USAID director, Marco Rubio. Now, Democrats are out filing lawsuits everywhere to block everything. And we'll get into a little bit of that here in a minute. But here's something very interesting. A CBS News poll said that 70% of voters say President Trump is keeping his campaign promises. I'll bet that there's almost no president that has had that result in just, it's 3 weeks into his administration, barely. And saying that you had that 70% of all voters say Trump is keeping his campaign promises. His overall approval rating is at 53%, which is a strong approval rating. 59% of voters approve of his deportation operations. 59%. 64% support his decision to send U.S. troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. Majority of voters describe Trump according to the following adjectives: tough, energetic, focused, effective. Now, most voters surveyed, 66%, said the administration hasn't focused enough on lowering prices since Trump took office. Now, that, of course, has been egged on, pun intended, by the media, the left-wing media, and the Democrats, who are saying that somehow you're going to actually lower prices that quickly within just 3 weeks. It is going to take time. And I made the joke about egging things on because egg prices during the month of January, prior to President Trump taking office, and obviously prior to him being able to have any effect on anything that's going on, went up 50% in many places. And now at least $1.50. I think it's almost $7. Is you're gonna $7 or $8 is what you're gonna see to pay in Oregon for a dozen eggs. I think the national average is somewhere around $5, and that's a basic food stuff. Well, it's a result of something that really has nothing to do with stuff President Trump controls, because there's a bird flu that's been sweeping through and leading to the slaughtering of a whole bunch of chickens in order to prevent the spread of the bird flu, which is either killing the birds or infecting many others and leading to actually a shortage in the case of egg laying. I mean, eggs are laid by chickens, and this is something we should keep an eye on. But I think, wow, isn't this interesting that this is what voters are getting from his early efforts? Now, that's not going to stop the Democrats from trashing him, and the media is already trying to do it. They're already trying to trash Doge, which frankly is exposing the really, really awful stuff that we've been seeing come out of these agencies. Money, $20 million to do Sesame Street in Iraq, millions of dollars to go and do a transgender play, a theater production in Ireland. Hundreds of thousands of dollars spent even on promoting DEI in Serbia. It was a piggy bank. And the worst of all, and you've probably seen and heard, $11.99 for a pack of eggs in the Oregon coast. I don't doubt it, Lori. I don't doubt it. And it's awful. By the way, Oregon specifically chose to make everything more expensive because they banned non-cage free eggs. And whatever you think about that, fine. But if you take away what was the least expensive option for eggs, and then something happens like this bird flu, it's going to be hard to afford eggs. And frankly, eggs are one of the most nutritious things you can eat. I eat them all the time. And it's something that, I kind of wish that Democrats spent more time trying to make things that are bad for you more expensive, but they didn't. They made basic foodstuffs more expensive, and it's going to get worse because a lot of the stuff they've done is going to take time to get rid of, and they're going to file lawsuits every time they can. Shifting gears here, it looks like that one of the things the president's doing is he and his appointees are going hammer and tongs after trying to identify illegal migrants that have melted into the country, and not in the way a melting pot's supposed to work, but into disappear, particularly if they've lost their asylum court case. They're supposed to leave. And of course, the Democrats and the media are omitting in everything they talk about. They claim, like in New York City, I saw a report this morning, that the administration and ICE are these awful people coming in and seizing, these innocent illegal migrants from workplaces and schools and stuff like that. Well, guess what? They've specifically targeted people with criminal records, people who are wanted for crimes, and they're going to get them the hell out of the country, as President Trump said. And I dare Democrats to interpose and stand in the way. Lars Larson says that Tina Kotek appears to be prepared to shield criminals and protect them in Oregon. I think that is political suicide, and it should be. I know it's bad for Oregon. I know it's bad for the victims that we're going to have of these people, because there are criminals who are going to find this out. They're all going to come to Oregon, and they're going to hang out here because they have people that are prepared to protect them. Same in Washington State, by the way. Bob Ferguson. So Tina Kotek and Bob Ferguson. This is a state that is decided to be a magnet for hardened criminals, rapists, convicted killers. And, about 5% of the state's population are illegal aliens in Oregon. But 14% of the convicted killers and 18% of the rapists are illegal aliens. They don't belong here. And of course, as we know, Democrats voted in lockstep against the Laken Riley Act because they would rather see more Americans, young, innocent, just living their lives Americans like Laken Riley, get their heads bashed in by multi-arrest criminals. They would rather see that happen than apparently this constituency that, I don't know, are they expecting votes to come in for them? Is that really their plan, is that they're going to get votes from this group? I know that we've got to hold Democrats accountable, and I think we should continue to confront them. Meanwhile, Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, has asked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to deputize some of his law enforcement workers, including the IRS criminal investigators, in order to help her department find illegal migrants in the tax rolls and identify them, find where they are, and, as President Trump said, get them the hell out of the country. This is, as we know, not something that the Biden administration did at all. In fact, quite the opposite. They were IRS agents, if they were whistleblowers against the fraudulent investigation of Hunter and Joe Biden and his family, then they got retaliated against. Others were just simply encouraged to go out and be part of the 88,000 strong workforce to go and find, if you paid anybody more than $600 for the year and didn't file a 1099. This is something that will go down in history as one of the dumbest things the Democrats have ever done, is oppose using the government's own data to find people who don't reside here legally. If anything, they should be permitted to identify them. Now, meanwhile, it looks like the Trump administration is getting some friends and some legislation here in Oregon. One example, of course, and I think this is a very good thing, is that Josephine County, the sheriff is trying to walk this tightrope between the federal law and the state sanctuary laws. And Coos County looked at this and decided not to proceed with it. But I think this is where, if people stand in the way of federal immigration enforcement, there may be consequences. So I don't think you're going to see any of the sheriffs in this state interfere with ICE. But Democrats are going to try to do it. And they're going to try to say that you have to have a warrant in order to arrest. And remove people who are here illegally. There is no such predicate required whatsoever under federal law. The federal government actually, and it was the Democrats themselves who established this precedent when the former governor of Arizona tried to conduct for some of her own immigration enforcement by arresting people and trying to do what the Obama administration refused to do. That went all the way through the federal court system and was ruled eventually to be the province of the federal government and not something the state could interfere with or try to duplicate. That is going to be a judgment that I think they're all going to remember for a very long time, because that one's going to work against the Democrats now, who have decided that this is apparently more important than making sure that they protect the people of their state. Meanwhile, a very good bill has been proposed, which here in the state of Oregon, House Bill 2442, which will require all first-time voters to provide proof of citizenship to register to vote. Presently, you can register online through the Oregon Secretary of State's website, where you are the only requirement regarding U.S. citizenship is a declaration on your honor that you are a U.S. citizen. And of course, as you know, there's like no enforcement of it, so people can literally say anything they want. Although government-issued identification documents are accepted as valid proof of registration, the current system prefers using the Oregon driver's license, permit, or ID number as indicated in the voter registration card. Recently, there were 50,000 people in Oregon who were registered without having to prove they were U.S. citizens. They frankly didn't have to do it and did so using means of identification that circumvented this having to prove this. This House bill will require evidence of citizenship for persons registering to vote for the first time in this state. And it specifies when registration for a qualified person occurs and repeals the electronic voter registration system with regard to these voters. So the bill, all Republican sponsors, Dwayne Junker, Ed Deal, Court Boyce, Christine Drazan, Kevin Mannix, Boomer Wright, State Senator Todd Nash, David Brock Smith, State Senator, and State Senator Suzanne Weber. No Democrats. So Democrats, here it is. It's official. They are for making it easy and, in fact, unprovable that someone registered to vote who is not a citizen. So we got our work cut out for us, but there's a bill that's going to put this to the test. And I don't know what Republicans can really do to force a vote on it, but I think it would make one hell of a ballot measure. What do you guys think? Yes, you should call your elected representatives, be they Republicans or Democrats, and share with them your feelings on this bill. And of course, many people in the state already think it is the case, that it is already the law. Meanwhile, as we know, there is money has been cut off to the city of Portland, and Portland is going to join San Francisco and other sanctuary cities in suing the Trump administration to force them to send money, when the Trump administration said, we're not going to send it to cities that don't cooperate with ICE and refuse to help them get criminal, illegal immigrants out of the city. And of course, these sanctuary laws are designed specifically to do that. So they're going to go and try to fight this. It'll obviously go through the court system. Let's see where it happens. I think that there was a version of this that took place, this lawsuit back during the first Trump administration. And I don't remember the specifics of it. I don't think the Trump administration prevailed. However, this is something that I think makes perfect sense, because there's no reason for the federal government to send money to a city that is actually going to obstruct the federal government from enforcing its mandate, its federal law. And if they want to continue to do that, then they can do it on their own dime. And, I think that's what they're going to try to do, is have the court system overrule the president. I don't know if that's going to work. But there are a lot of Democrats that are going to grandstand about this. And when they do, they're going to find that I think that's a losing proposition. Meanwhile, the Democrats are absolutely losing their freaking minds over Doge. And it started, of course, with a press conference that was done last week where Chuck Schumer and a whole variety of Democrats in Congress started making all kinds of baseless, evidence-free accusations against Doge, against Elon Musk. And of course, it's all aimed at President Trump and stopping what he promised he would do and what he has every right to do, which is to determine what money is being spent on, looking at the accounts of the government, and then exposing that and then putting a stop to it. And when they say unelected billionaires are doing this stuff, Elon Musk isn't doing anything that President Trump hasn't empowered him to do. And President Trump is elected. Every single person in the executive branch is not elected. I don't know how Democrats missed that, but of course they know that's the case because they used their unelected people to implement all these policies in the past. And President Trump is changing all that and seizing control again of the federal government. But Oregon Congresswoman Val Hoyle, who I think we all knew from the beginning that this is a big phony deal, that she's a fake and a phony, but she joined the Doge caucus back last fall after she got frankly raked over the coals by her opponent, Monique Despain, in 2024. Monique ran on government transparency and accountability and gave specific examples. Val Hoyle, who is the epitome of non-transparency and non-accountability, given everything she's done in her career, as well as her attempt to cover up government records and withhold them, and still maybe withholding them from the federal government in the LaModa criminal investigation that's taking place that involves Shemia Fagan, and is looking at Val Hoyle's communications with LaModa and others while she was the bully commissioner prior to a run for Congress in 2022. She was looking for a way to cheaply burnish her credentials on transparency, but the heat got too much in the kitchen, and she is now attacking Elon Musk, claiming he's burning down the government. And this is coming from a party, by the way, that doesn't seem to have a problem with all of our forests burning down, including Val Hoyle, who voted against the Fix Our Forests Act last fall. She is a walking contradiction in terms of her political rhetoric. She says she wants to do something about all these problems. She ran on saying she's going to do something about all these problems. Her record says she was doing the opposite. And then within a few months, she's now leaving, which is just a caucus within the House of Representatives that actually has its own purview, its own portfolio, really isn't directly involved or connected to Elon Musk and what's happening in the executive branch, which is something Val Hoyle pointed out last week until the heat got too much. And now she's decided to bolt. And she's attacking Elon Musk and claiming that the government's being burned down. You know what, Val, spend your time trying to figure out how to stop her forest from burning down, which is actually what people in your district want. And maybe worry a little bit less about how you're going to keep sending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars to woke programs around the world that no one ever authorized in Congress. By the way, the worst thing that DOGE has found in USAID by far is what was done to buy $26 million worth of subscriptions at the price of $10,000 to $15,000 each to Politico, a website that does everything the Democrats want or need on a regular basis, including helping create the predicate for the impeachment of President Trump during his first term through their phony unnamed source reporting. They got $26 million, including $8 million just last year. Now imagine if President Trump went and spent $26 million through USAID to buy thousands and thousands of subscriptions to Fox Nation or to the Wall Street Journal. Would the Democrats consider that to be corruption? Well, of course they would. So they were bribing a news outlet with a seat in the briefing room in the White House. They were bribing them to give them the coverage that they got. And you know what? That's what the Democrats got. But the lies ended with President Trump winning. And, Val Hoyle, she's really not even good at lying, but she claimed that she wanted to ensure working people, seniors, and veterans have a champion in the room when Republicans proposed cuts to the federal government. Now we know that was all phony because she doesn't want to cut anything. And she's claiming that they're going to cut Social Security, which President Trump has said he's not going to do, period, end of story. In fact, the one department where I think they're already discussing increasing funds is the VA. Now, they should still find, and they will still find, waste, fraud, and abuse in the Veterans Administration, because every dollar spent on waste, fraud, and abuse is not spent on a veteran getting better and getting healthier and staying healthy. And of course, working people. There's one thing Val Hoyle doesn't know anything about, and it's working people, because she spent decades now working in the government, and all she does is make the lives of working people more expensive with her every vote and her every utterance. She's even proposed expanding Social Security, by the way, which she says is a great idea, because expanding Social Security will, of course, make Social Security less solvent. And of course, Social Security already can't, through its trust fund, which has been borrowed with a bunch of IOUs in it by the Democrats in an unprecedented fashion in recent years. So we need this, and this is time to call out Val Hoyle and the corruptocrats. But that's not going to stop the Democrats. A new member of Congress is making her name in the 3rd district. She replaced bow tie congressman, the bow tie buffoon, Earl Blumenauer. Her name is Maxine Dexter, and she wants to. It's a bill where she claims to have introduced that would prohibit unelected billionaire Elon Musk from retaliating against federal employees, which is insane, because looking for corruption is not retaliation. It's actually what you're supposed to do. But she's decided that she's going to propose this bill. She's in a district that literally a Democrat can't lose. She could literally do anything. She'd start shooting people in the street. She'd still get reelected. And of course, this nonsense about being an unelected billionaire has nothing to do at all with how the federal government functions. But that's what she's done. So this is what Oregon's doing. Oregon's decided to go and fight back against the federal government instead of finding some way to cooperate. And it's really fascinating, because now we have our new Attorney General, Dan Rayfield, who we thought was going to go and figure out how to put a stop to fentanyl and to reduce crime in the state of Oregon. But apparently he has no time to do that, because his top concern now is to fight back against the Trump administration's executive order on defunding of gender affirming care, as they put it. which is basically giving kids under 18 hormone blockers and mutilating their genitals. And so that's his top concern. And he's decided to join all these other states in a lawsuit. So there you go. So if you didn't vote for that, then it's time to start letting other people know that that's what they got for their vote if they voted for that guy. They're not getting lower crime. They're not getting less fentanyl. They're not getting rid of criminals. They're not making our streets safer. They're not even cracking down on corruption in Oregon. They're simply fighting the battle of making sure that they can keep the gravy train coming from the federal government, paying for surgeries for children and hormone blockers for children. By the way, it's really becoming very unpopular, even amongst companies here in Oregon, to push DEI. Intel is the latest company that is pulling back on DEI, and they have disclosed that in their annual report. A lot of this has to do, by the way, with not only the executive order from President Trump, but it also has become a vulnerability, if you want to participate in federal funding programs, which there is the CHIPS Act that's meant to reshore the production of high-end microprocessors and to restore the competitiveness across the board of the American microprocessor industry, particularly since some 95% of the high-end microprocessors are made in Taiwan, which is sitting right across 100 plus miles only from mainland China, surrounded by missiles and an armada of warships and planes. Not a great place to make the entire world dependent upon. And Taiwan knows this. They're in fact participating in opening these factories here. But Intel said, you know what? DEI, not so important when it comes to the bottom line of our business. We also know there's been court cases that have identified and established liability for companies that discriminate based on race and gender. And that's what this actually DEI requires people to do. So this is something that's becoming rapidly unpopular. Speaking of rapidly unpopular, here's something that really stuck out to me. The U.S. Forest Service is using the threat of wildfires to meet timber targets, documents show. The year 2015 marked a turning point. The U.S. Forest Service, for the first time in its history, spent more than 50% of its budget on wildfire management, according to an agency report from last year. The burden of dealing with wildfires has even led the agency to borrow funds from other programs, including wildfire prevention programs, to pay for putting out fires. Los Angeles, Valhoyle. And it's recognized that it's a legacy of the fire suppression policies. Now, they immediately try to say it's climate change. But if they want to say it's climate change, that makes no sense to stop, to not pursue forest management that prevents the fires. But they don't really have time for that because they're too busy wilding our forests, which means the same as leaving the brush there to turn into fuel load and create super fires, super wildfires, mega wildfires, which we've seen in this state and, of course, consumed part of Los Angeles recently. And so there's going to be new leadership coming in. And even some of the people that were working for Biden were starting to have to admit that it is a giant poop storm, what they've created in that agency. And he said that Congressman Bentz from Oregon, the lone Republican representing the state at this point, is pointing out how there's a long way to go because we have to start reducing the nation's hazardous fuel load in the forests. and there's a lot of timber that could actually be harvested as a result. But this is the National Forest Service needs to be not only held accountable, but they have to change the game up entirely. And if they've been watching what's been happening with the rest of the federal government, they might want to take note that the game is up. They're not going to put up with this stuff anymore. Curry County is considering using a state of emergency, declaring a state of emergency to take over federal forest management. They are considering a novel strategy used by a county in Arizona. Curry County commissioners presented a draft proclamation on Wednesday to declare a state of emergency for the purpose of taking over the management of public forests from federal authorities. And people who are supporting this proposal say it's needed because the federal agencies have just failed to manage forests for wildfire. Commissioner Jay Trost claimed that every major recent fire in the county occurred on state and federal land. Private timber industry is managing their land correctly. The federal and state folks are not. And in the case, I have heard that the state has been usually much more prompt at putting out fires, but the feds let them burn and turn into mega fires. And there's plenty of eyewitness accounts that I personally have heard of this happening. And what they do, they literally let them burn. They don't work at night. They stop and just let it happen. This is a pretty serious situation, but it's one that maybe Curry County is going to take some action on. There's state regulation of homeowners in high wildfire hazardous zones that will impact housing costs and the supply. So in a county that's lacking housing, the way the state's doing this is actually making things worse. But the proclamation alleges that federal authorities are not following the legal requirements for cooperation and consultation with the counties for public forest management. And they're modeling it after Apache County, Arizona, which actually is one of the counties that did that. Now, the draft resolution wasn't passed yet, but there will be a public workshop on the proposal next week. So stay tuned, because if you're in Curry County, it's time to speak up on this. And frankly, support your friends and neighbors in Curry County who need our support. They actually are the most heavily forested county in terms of percent of the land area. And it's not a heavily populated county, but they literally almost lost the city of Brookings to one of the fires just a few years ago. The story I heard was going this way, and then suddenly it switched and went the other way. Had it continued going where it was going, Brookings would have been like what we've seen in Los Angeles. And Brookings is one of the two largest cities in the county. So it's time to hold the federal agencies accountable. I think President Trump is also interested in doing that. So maybe we are finally going to get some action. Now, you're right. Curry County has beautiful forests. It's actually one of the most beautiful counties in the state. And I was very impressed with it and really enjoyed getting to see it and getting to know the folks there. But maybe the state doesn't seem to care about rural Oregon, period. And the federal government until now has cared even less. So, and there's a consequence here at the state level, because there's a rumor going around that Tina Kotek may not run again for governor. As the article goes, and I think you probably should take a look at this and read it for yourself, but she's managed to achieve the distinction of being America's least liked governor 2 years in a row. That was a distinction previously held by, you got it, Governor Kate Brown. I think half the state probably doesn't even know that Tina Kotek's the governor and still thinks it's Kate Brown, because frankly, there's not a lot to show for Tina Kotek's first 2 years, and Kate Brown was disastrous and unpopular when she left office. But add to that just this weekend, the Oregonian reported bombshell news that Oregon students are ranking among the nation's worst, and Kotek ignored it. She just ignored it. The State Department of Education did not issue any press release about the results of what's known as the nation's report card, scores that would otherwise scrutinized from coast to coast for any sign that students were recovering from the pandemic setbacks. But Kotek, she's been quiet. She has nothing to say about it. And did you know that there used to be a position called the superintendent of public instruction in this state? It was elected statewide. They got rid of it. You know who they made the top officer overseeing the state's education system to replace the superintendent of public instruction? The governor. So the buck stops with her. She's also had a lot of other problems. 4 top staffers resigned. She held a $200,000 taxpayer-funded conference for her wife, which only 29 people attended. She got scrutiny over her spouse using her position to lobby. She threw a $9,000 party for employees, improperly paid parking expenses for others. And then there's a lengthy list, a review of her misspendings, and is still being investigated. Now, I don't believe for a second that she won't run again. I think she will, but it's not looking good. And it couldn't happen to a nicer governor. But it does mean that we have to wake up and maybe take up the opportunity to turn this into a positive for the state of Oregon. By the way, this is the Oregonian report here that Oregon's near worst in the nation education outcomes prompts a reckoning for school spending. Guess what? The number one thing, the biggest part of the budget that the state government in Salem and the state legislature is looking at right now and dealing with, Department of Education. And they claim to be losing their minds that, Trump might take action against the federal Department of Education, which has been an unmitigated failure, decades of ballooning spending. And as we now know, there's plenty of DEI stuff, and DOGE is looking into the education department. Wait for that to come out. Maybe the department will get shut down and the money sent to the states where the accountability should be anyway. But the Oregon Department of Education ranks near the bottom in math and reading. So we're a big failure in this state. Yep. There's unlimited funds, it seems, to go and pay for woke idiot programs pushing DEI, not to mention the fact that there's never seems to be a limit on how much in terms of pay increases and increases of PERS spending there is in our government. That's the public employee retirement system. It's pretty unlimited. And look, they got a sugar high off of all of the pandemic relief funds that came through, $1 billion. There was a $1 billion corporate tax that was it was called the Student Success Program. And this tax, the corporate activities tax that's been driving businesses into bankruptcy or out of the state, was designed to fund this. And yet we've seen a steady decline since 2017. And unlike the rest of the country, we have not seen the bounce back from the pandemic at all. And it's not because of the pandemic. It's because of our incompetent and failed people running things here. A education economics lab called Edunomics Lab at Georgetown University said something has to change in Oregon schools. More money did not produce any kind of bumper increase in student outcomes. More money didn't produce the results. I can guarantee you that's the only thing Democrats will do in this session is spend more money. And they will say that they need to raise taxes to do that, even though that's pretty much all they've done until now. And they really should rename it the economic failure tax instead of the student success tax. In fact, they should call it the student failure tax too, because that really has undermined our schools, leaving people with the impression that the money is being spent wisely. Tina Kotek's running out of time to even show that she's done anything about this, and her silence is deafening on this. So let everybody know that the governor, who maybe she won't run again, is really presiding over a massive failure that she promised to solve. And There's another article in the Oregon Catalyst which goes into more detail about the spending per pupil and what's happened to the reading scores in particular, which I don't know how you can claim to have achieved anything in education if you don't have people reading at grade level. Like, if you can't do that, then you chuck everything else. You make sure they can do math and reading at grade level. And if they can't read, they probably can't succeed at any classes, which is amazing. And of course, Susan McLean, Democrat and from Forest Grove, she took issue with using tests as a single measure comparison. Students might have grown, she says, outside of testing environments. But if they can't read, explain to me how they're growing in terms of literacy. State Senator Lou Frederick, a Democrat from Portland, said he has relatives in Mississippi or educators who say the state's progress is overhyped. He urged his colleagues not to overreact to the bad education results. Don't panic. We'll cover this one up and make everybody forget about it, just like we did before. And State Senator Janine Solman, also from Hillsborough, was equivocal, noting Oregon's success in some academic measures, but not others. Yes, they are doing a super awesome job learning the grammatically incorrect pronouns that they're supposed to use, but they aren't learning to read and write English correctly, which really is a huge disservice. And frankly, I would like to see legislators, if I could make a wish, legislators who vote for the current system, the education budget, for the to uphold the current pursuits and standards in education, or for lowering those standards for that matter, and ignoring this problem. What if they face personal legal liability from the students who they failed? What if they could be sued? I wonder if they would change their minds about what they're doing. Clearly, what they need to face ultimately are political consequences, which is being removed from office. But Oregon fails and spends more money doing it. That's the bottom line. Oregon has a long history of doing this. The $5.3 billion Oregon transportation bill in 2017 touted accountability measures and significant improvements to our roads, such as the I-5 Rose Quarter project. It hasn't delivered on any of that. It was supposed to set up an efficient tracking of revenue, deliver projects on budget and on time, fail. Complete cost benefit analysis, fail. Maintain clear and updated information on projects and funding, fail. House Bill 2017 included measures ODOT said were intended to, quote, ensure accountability, transparency, and efficiency, creating benchmarks. It added new taxes, increased existing taxes and fees to generate the $5.3 billion for these projects. And if you're still waiting in line, waiting in traffic someplace in the Portland metro area, for instance, then you know that they have failed. They, in fact, have made things worse, and they have done nothing in the Rose Quarter. They have failed on the urban mobility strategy, which encompasses the Rose Quarter and the Abernathy Bridge projects. There's a lot to expose here. There's audits that have exposed the significant funding and performance failures. And we need to go and let everybody know about this, because they are being fleeced, and failure is what they're getting. And the Democrats aren't getting the message because they plan to pass a fuel tax, which is described here. It's Senate Bill 687. And it's the ability, they're going to remove voters from the process of determining if local jurisdictions, city councils, county commissions may pass fuel taxes without going to the voters first. So they want to cut the voters out. And look, there's a fuel tax that's been added to the cost of gas in Portland. The voters approved it. So be it. They're definitely not getting the results they expected on Portland roadways. There's potholes everywhere and complete morons wasting that money. And then they're actually in a deficit right now. So it just shows that they're definitely not spending it on fixing things. But that bill would actually remove voters from the decision-making process so that this can be done all over the state. The state senators and representatives that want this are from Troutdale, Wood Village, Fairview, and North Gresham. So they would like their cities to be able to start raising fuel taxes. By the way, you already have a secret gas tax in the form of the same thing that was done in California, a 50-cent more per gallon than the national average cost of our gasoline is due to the 2015 bill, Senate Bill 324, the Permanent Clean Fuels bill. And it forced companies purchasing that are producing and providing gasoline to boost the ethanol content and purchase environmental credits. And these credits, of course, were essentially just proceeds, a stealth tax on your gasoline. Unlike the real gas tax, none of this, that which is supposed to fund road repair, this backdoor tax just rewards big energy companies through the back door. And ultimately, taxpayers pay the cost to no benefit. They haven't lowered the Earth's temperature. They're not going to. And they definitely haven't improved the roads. And now they want to make it so that every city and town in the state can go ahead and raise all the revenues they want. Let me go ahead and post these two stories because this is what's being done in your name in Salem right now. And really, we're going to have to speak up because why not? Why not vent on these people, but just be smart about it, be polite and respectful, but incisive, and use the things that we've posted here to drive that message home. And if we don't, we risk that out of the record number of bills that are being submitted, apparently 2,200 and counting. They usually get to about 4,000. They said 25% of these bills may become law here in Oregon. And nearly all of the stuff that the Democrats propose that doesn't have some bipartisan basis to it are usually making things worse. Although, actually, some of these bills are to fix errors they made in the previous session, and errors that they didn't bother fixing last time because, frankly, they took in very little public input on these bills. They cram them through short notice. They don't let people come in person because they don't even give people enough time in our large state to travel there. It's really just the interest groups and the people that they agree with and support. But we can turn the tide. I know that it's hard to be polite and respectful, but just be direct and leave it at that. Because I think what you'll find is that if you speak the truth and enough people do that, Democrats actually start to feel some pressure. They start to react. And when they ignore it, it's on the record, by the way, and we will remind them of that because that is part of a record that even courts can look at, by the way, when they do hinky doodle things and try to get away with it. And they do stuff that they shouldn't get away with. And by the way, some of those courts are federal courts with Trump appointed judges. Meanwhile, Republicans are pursuing an important bill, House Bill 2301, which is to raise the estate tax threshold to $7 million and replace tax brackets with a 7% flat tax above the exempt amount. This is because many families are actually dramatically impacted, such as families that own property, farms, things that they built up over their lives and sought to have their children inherit, and they end up having to sell this stuff because they have to pay the sizable inheritance tax. If you're talking about lowering the cost of living in Oregon, this is part of it. And we're not talking about super wealthy. We're talking about lifting it to $7 million because if I understand it correctly, right now it's at $1 million. If you can cross a threshold that can be crossed by nearly anybody who just simply owned a house for 20 years in an area whose housing prices have gone up, not because they are independently wealthy, some of them even on fixed incomes. And now you're going to be forced into paying sizable inheritance taxes. This is the second highest estate tax in the country, most punitive in the nation. 38 other states don't even have an estate tax or repealed it. And Representative Bobby Levy, who's a co-sponsor of the bill, said the bill modernizes the state tax, protects family-owned businesses and farms, and ensures Oregonians who have worked their whole lives to build something can actually pass it down to their children without the state taking an unfair cut. I don't even think they should take any cut, but this is scaling back things. This should be a reasonable bipartisan compromise. But as it stands right now, Democrats are not on board with this at all. They're unlikely to give it a proper hearing. Ultimately, now there is supposed to be a hearing, and you can provide input on this. I'm going to provide a link to this. I think Sonny might have talked about this last week, and you really should get in there and submit testimony. You don't have to be like eloquent. Just tell people in the legislature why you think it's a good idea. This time, you're really trying to make the case for a positive suggestion. Last story for the night, and I think this is a good one. A ballot measure to restart nuclear power in Oregon has been launched. I'm going to go try to make sure I sign it as soon as possible. It would repeal the 1980 ballot measure, Measure 7, that put these restrictions on nuclear power, saying that there had to be a federally licensed facility to dispose of high-level radioactive waste. That problem has been solved, and it is being stored adequately on the sites where they are in safe storage facilities. So this is to force nuclear power to wait for Yucca Mountain, which actually never happened. And it would actually allow nuclear power, which is clean energy, to help people have a reliable baseload source of energy in this state. We actually have one of the best companies in the country, in the world, based in Corvallis, that is a producer of small modular reactors that actually do a great job of this and can't melt down. They're totally safe. So this is something that it's time we do. We should be a leader in this. And if Democrats are believing that they want renewable energy, they're not going to get enough solar and wind ever to do that. At least not before they blight the entire state with solar panels and windmills and offshore wind farms. And so this is something you want to take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and post it here. This is very good news. We've talked to Representative Ed Deal about this, and it's time. It's time that this happened. It's time that we protect ourselves against the threat that Democrats are going to essentially deprive us of reliable, affordable energy and leave us with unreliable, unaffordable energy when there's a perfectly good solution waiting that is decades advanced beyond anything that existed in the late 1970s. And we should make sure that this happens. By the way, all these data centers that are doing all this AI and running all these systems and databases that we rely upon, all these websites, all these services, they're consuming enormous amounts of electricity, and they're going to consume a lot more. And as those get built up, companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft are out there looking to maybe even have their own nuclear power plants to be sure that they can afford and reliably power those plants. And as we get rid of hydroelectric dams here in Oregon, that was the one thing that they used to locate data centers here for, is that we had this cheap, reliable form of electricity. Democrats want to take those dams out and leave us with even less of that. So take a look at this. IP18. I'm going to try to get more information about this and see if we can't talk to the folks that are sponsoring it, because it's super important for our future. Even Oregon could get this one right. We need to have a public discussion about it, and nothing better than an initiative petition to do that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. Sorry for the delay, but I packed a lot in. It was a information, action-packed show, and I'll be back tomorrow night with another episode of The Captive Audience. I hope to have more guests on here in the coming weeks and to bring to you news and opinion that you can't find anywhere else in the state of Oregon.